Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
As host to Whitetail Rendezvous, I want to say thank you. Thank you for almost 100,000 iTunes downloads. Thank you to the 300 guests who've been on the show. And thank you to over 30,000 followers on social media. Couldn't do this show without every single one of you. And secondly, sometimes the sound quality isn't radio quality, isn't recording room quality. It is what it is. People might be in a tree stand, a box blind. They might be sitting in their pickup truck on a hillside, or they might be traveling to and from a blind or home from work. They're all over. And because of that, sometimes the quality isn't what you would expect or would have hoped for.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode 306.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, and we're heading north of the border up to Evansburg, Alberta, Canada, and meeting with Calvin Buckler. Calvin has a TV show called The Boneyard, and he's also started an arrow company with Jason Acorn called Killing Stix. Going to be at the ATA show. This will air before then, so booth number 23. I love talking to Calvin because he knows what it takes to hunt big bucks, to sit in below zero weather for 3 or 4 days. In this one buck he took this year, he sat for him over 40 times from through archery into gun season, and he finally got him. So he's going to tell you some tricks of the trade and what it takes to hunt up north.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. And on this freezing, snowy day, we're even going to get colder. We're heading up to Evansburg, Alberta, Canada, north of the border, and we're going to connect with Calvin Buckler. And Calvin is the president of Killing Stix. Calvin, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey, tell me about this monster buck you sent me with your bio. Tell me the story about that. I mean, that's an impressive deer.
Yeah, it was, I sat over 40 times for that deer in bow season and in rifle season. It was, it was a friend come over and we were talking, and I said I didn't have any good bucks on my trail cameras, and he pulled out his phone and showed me this picture, and I went, oh yeah, that's a good one. And he, so then I started hunting the deer because it was just coincidence that I knew the guy that owned the land beside him, so I could hunt that piece of property. It was a pea field, and I hunted him in bow season. I think I filmed him once at about 300 yards, but it was getting dark. And then I kept sitting pretty much all through November, and then November 27th, I'm sitting in the blind. It's 4 o'clock. It's an hour before it gets dark. I look out the corner of my eye, and there's the buck, right? I'd passed probably 6 bucks, 7 bucks before that. Nice ones, and I just, here comes the buck. I'm waiting for him. I turn the camera, zoom in. He looks over his shoulder. He's looking back, and he starts running. And I panic, swing the camera, and he stops at the edge of the trees and runs into the trees. And here comes a German Shepherd dog chasing him.
No.
And I almost cried a tear. Yeah, it was horrible. So I sat there till it got dark, and then I couldn't believe it because that was the first time I'd seen that deer in the daylight, and it was perfect light, like 10 after 4. It was beautiful light. But anyway, I went back the next night. The wind was right, and he stayed in the trees. I didn't know if he was going to come across the road again because I knew he was coming from across the road into that pea field. And he came back out just walking across, and I took my shot, and the rest is history. My biggest buck to date, he grossed 175 and 5/8, so he's a beauty.
got a lot of mass. And folks, when you listen to the show, you'll be able to see it. Just go to my website and it'll be in the show notes. For the buck, and it's just a traditional everything you hope to ever see if you go hunt north of the border. And let's talk about hunting in the north. What challenges do you have that we don't have down in the States, Calvin?
Well, I haven't hunted the States. Like, I just, see it on TV, and like I guess that in 2013, that winter kill it really knocked the deer population down. And so, like, my problem here, like bow hunting, is it's such, I'm hunting big areas. So, like, I'll put out 20 trail cameras in July to try and find a couple deer I want to hunt. And then usually those big deer are nocturnal, so it's really, like, difficult to get on them. But it's just, and then the cold in November is the next thing. Like, the cold temperatures can make it really difficult to sit for a deer in a tree stand, when the wind's blowing and it's minus 20, and you get cold. So
how do people do that? I mean, I know they bow hunt. The ruts when latter part of October, early November up there?
Yeah, early November. Yeah, it's I watched I seen a doe actually a buck mount a doe, and then another buck chased him off and mounted her, again. And I'm like, holy cow! First time I've ever seen that, and that was November 11th. So that was that was pretty much full rut then.
And what's the typical temperature? I know I talked to one guy who went north of the border, and his hunt, he said it was extremely warm and in October. So typically November rut weather, what are we looking at?
It can be from anywhere from -5 to -30. -10 is the average.
And that's Celsius. Yeah, that's Celsius. Okay. So
it's cold.
Yeah, you have
to. So 0 Fahrenheit would be, I think, is -20.
Yes. I believe. So when you think, how do you guys sit in a tree stand when it's 0 and the wind's blowing?
Well, you don't usually. I don't. That's why I switched. I gave up and went to the rifle, because I've been a rifle hunter my whole life. Bow hunting, I've been bow hunting for 7 years, I own an arrow company now, so I should be trying to get him with a bow, but it was just, I tried and I didn't get it done. And then I have a limited time. So I went out with a rifle and got it done. So.
What kind of blind were you sitting in when you shot the deer?
Just a regular pop-up, but I had a heater in there, like a propane tank with a little buddy heater on top, or whatever they're called.
Uh-huh.
And then I would, shut that off about half an hour before last light. And, that's how otherwise, I've done it. I've sat in a blind, in -30 with no heater, and you get cold. So, especially if you have to walk in through the snow or something and you get sweated up, it's pretty terrible, but...
Yeah.
But that's why the deer have bigger.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, that's why I know the deer in up north have bigger bodies, because they need the bigger body mass to be able to survive, right? Mm-hmm. To keep the body heat. It's the same as even the moose here, like in central Alberta. I'm in central Alberta, and you go 2 hours north, like to Swan Hills, and the moose are bigger bodied, because there's more snow and it's colder, like it stays colder for longer, and the smaller moose just won't last as long, and the wolves will get them easier too, right, if they're smaller. So that's why, I look at a deer in Texas, to me it's like a German Shepherd dog, the body with this giant rack, whereas the deer I killed, it'd be 250 pounds for sure, so.
Yeah, and I hear they go over 300 pounds regularly.
Yeah. There's some, like the one I arrowed last year was just a giant body. Like his rack wasn't that spectacular. He's still a really nice deer, old buck, but just a giant body on that deer. Like, holy, yeah, he was huge. So big deer.
Now, what would three things that you'd want to tell somebody coming, from the States to Canada, make sure that they do before they get to Canada?
Well, if you're hunting with an outfitter, make sure you have references, so you know that you're going to a place where they know what they're doing. Like and they have a good success rate, and you talk to someone who's been there, so you know it's not a gong show. And then obviously you have warm clothing, and make sure they have heaters in the blind, because usually for a whitetail you have to sit. That's just the way it is. Sometimes they'll drive you around, but most times you're sitting, and then have real warm clothes. And then depending on what time of year, you can rattle. That works really well, like early season November, to get them to come in. But, the food source is the best, like that late season. I knew that pea field was like golden, because there was just does all over it, and because there was 10 acres of peas he didn't get picked up, and they were just all over that. So that was my lucky charm.
Well, you had a food plot. I mean, you had a standing food plot.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Now, what are the regs for food plots up in Canada?
Well, it wasn't there. You can't have them. This was a farmer that didn't get his peas off the field, and then I hunted it.
And so that's legal.
That's legal, yeah. Like same as swath grazing, like some guys for their cattle. The one year, the one guy got that nice deer off swath grazing because, they let the cattle move through it, and then he got it on the section the cows weren't on. But yeah, they were coming into that for late season for sure, because the does are there, and then obviously the bucks are there, right? So yeah.
Now, can you, Alberta, can you bait or put out alfalfa or anything?
No baiting. They're worried about the chronic wasting disease, because like if you dump a big pile, then they're scared because all the deer are eating from the same pile, and Saskatchewan has problems with that, and Alberta, like eastern or southeastern Alberta, has chronic wasting disease. So that's what they're worried about, is that they're, because of saliva, they eat from the same pile, and then they can pass it on a lot quicker.
So where did your hunting tradition start off? I mean, you've been up in Canada your whole life, so tell us about how the hunting tradition came to be.
I think I just was a hunter from when I was born. I just wanted to hunt. I wanted a pellet gun, then I got a 22 and shot some chickens, and then shot a couple coyotes, and had a greyhound white shepherd cross dog, and hunted coyotes like a maniac. That's when you're single and can do whatever you want, and you're a kid, right? You got all kinds of time. And then just big game. I mean, the whitetails for me were just, you see a whitetail with a big rack, it's just something it's a real rush, and that's what I like to hunt, is whitetails. I'll hunt anything, but the whitetails are my favorite thing to hunt. So
what's their mystique for you?
I think they're so spooky and hard to hunt. And then just the different styles of racks, an elk looks like an elk, a moose is a moose, and mule deer can have some non-typical stuff, but whitetails, you can have the high, tall ones, the wide ones, and then when they get bladed, they have that medieval look. I don't know. It's just for me, that's, I can stare at a whitetail rack, and it's just a big achievement. Like when I arrowed that deer last year, it was like and it was a mature buck. That was a big achievement for me. Like, and to self-film it, it was perfect. He come down the tree line, I waited him out and burped him, and perfect shot. He ran 80 yards and fell over, and it was a good one. I got lucky, just like this year. So.
Well, you knew he was there. If you take a look at the hunt this year, the guy said, "Hey, here's some pictures, and oh, by the way, you can hunt the land." I mean, that's kind of golden.
Yeah. I was lucky. I
go ahead.
No, it was super lucky to have the guy come and show me that picture, because he's not a hunter. Like, his wife bought him a trail camera, and he put it out and then got these pictures, right? And then he shows me. It was super lucky. Yeah.
Holy fright. Before you said you put out some 20 trail cameras during the summer months. Now, how do you decide where you're going to put them, and how do you build your hit list off them?
Well, I always go field edges, like that's, or fence lines, where they follow the field edge. The deer they always take the easiest route. And then I have my whitetail hotspots because, I've been hunting here for, whatever it is, since I was 16 years old. So 30 years, around here. So I have certain spots I hunt for whitetails where it's really good, along the one river, and a couple other spots. So I know there's always deer in there. It's just whether there's a big one or not is the question. And then you can feed them, before. You can't hunt over the bait, but you can, and that obviously dump little oats out, and they'll come to the oats, and then you get a picture, right? So that's how I do it. So
on any summer, I'm going to call it inventory, how many buck pictures do you typically get?
This year I probably had 30 different bucks, and there was probably 5 I would have taken, that I thought were mature. There was one old 4-point, he wouldn't score very well, but he broke his main beam off last year, but I didn't get a shot at him anyway, but I would take him. He's a real nice old deer and a good one to take, but yeah, he's smart.
Yes, they are. Now, what about predation up in north of the border, up in Alberta?
There's lots of cougars now. That seems like there's more and more cougars. Like the mule deer just took a pounding from the cougars around here, is my guess, because before there'd be 60 mule deer in the one field where, you couldn't hunt. There was probably a 2 miles stretch of road where you couldn't hunt, and the muleys are always in there. And now you see 2, 5, 3, where there would be 60. It's crazy. And the wolves, I got a wolf bait out with a friend of mine, Frank Lloyd. There were about 10 miles east of my place. There's a bunch of crown land, just straight bush, and the farmer had wolves in his yard, so we started a bait there, but we haven't caught one yet, but we're hoping.
Now, can you actually hunt them with rifles?
Oh yeah, they're open season on them. Yeah, it's amazing. My partner in the show in the arrows, his brother Jeff lives along the McLeod River. That's about an hour east of me or whatever. So, and he was hunting whitetails, and a pack of wolves come out, and we're hunting the whitetails too. And he said the female was jumping up on the bales and looking for the deer. So they got within range. He shot her off a bale, and then the big male stopped on the tree line. He shot him too. Jeff's a good shot, and I posted those pictures on our Facebook page, and the anti-hunters are just insane. Like they're endangered and they're blah blah blah, and it's like, no, they're not. They're poisoning. Like the Fish and Wildlife poisoned, I think 150 last year up by Hinton. That's north of me there, and then they shot I don't know how many out of helicopters. So they're terrible. They're killers. Those are the ones from Hinton went to Yellowstone National Park. So, and I'm sorry that they took them there. So.
Yeah. In Colorado, we don't have any wolves, but there are wolves in Colorado. So, if you could keep wolves in Rocky Mountain National Park, and keep wolves in Yellowstone Park, and let the whole system just work itself out. But as soon as they leave the park, then we got lots and lots and lots of problems. We really do. And like it or not, wolves aren't endangered, and
no, not at all.
And I love hearing wolves howl. I mean, it's one of those. It's just like, to me, hearing an elk bugle, in the frosty morning, and hearing a wolf howl at night. It's what I want. That's wilderness. I have no problem with that. But when they start, indiscriminately killing, and when the packs are learning how to kill, and they just rip the throats out of, or the stomachs out of cattle and sheep, blah, 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 not so much. And if you don't like it, listeners, don't even bother, saying anything, because it's my show, and that's how I feel about it.
Well, I think the only, people say, where the one farmer says you should go hunt with a stick and a knife, and I said, and you should plow your 10,000 acres with a horse and plow. They use technology to their advantage, and so do we. Yeah. And the difference between us and a wolf is, if I gut shoot a deer, and it falls over 100 yards away, I'm going to walk over there and shoot it again and put it out of its misery. A wolf will just tear its guts out and keep eating it.
Yep.
You know,
and
like
they're alive.
You know, they're a wild animal. Yeah, they don't have compassion or any sense of feeling. I'm eating, you know, and same thing as they say they're a natural predator. Well, so am I. You know, maybe I have a high-powered rifle, but still, I'm a predator. You know, get over it. You know, it's like, you know, I consider myself a predator. That's what I am. You know, so and part of the food chain. So, you know, but people, you can't. I don't know. It's like arguing over Trump. You know, it's either you love him or you hate him, and you can't. It's not even worth talking about.
Unfortunately, there's no middle ground because the weight of evidence about predation, not only to the wildlife, but to economic impact it has, is a problem, and the states do the best they can and sort it out.
Yeah.
So let's switch it up, and you got a new arrow company, and you're going to be at ATA booth number 223. That's a good cartridge too. And
yeah, it is actually.
That's a good cartridge. So you're going to be at ATA and rolling out killing sticks. So let's talk about Calvin and Jason and then their new company.
Yeah, we started it because we have a hunting show called the Boneyard, 4 seasons, and we've, begged for sponsorship and, and we do have some good sponsors, Loopold, and Rocky and, Cam Clark Ford has been good to us, but, still it ain't paying the bills. So we decided, we started with trail cameras and we still have those going. And then we went to arrows. Because we actually went to the ATA show 4 years ago, and I seen all these arrow companies, with bare shafts, and then we thought, geez, we should just start our own, because Canada doesn't have an arrow company, so we're the only Canadian arrow company, and away we went, and we just started shooting arrows and seeing which was the best. Bought a spine tester, and we went through 4 different manufacturers, and then we ended up with the one we got now. And away we went. So now we're trying to market them. So,
well, tell me about the arrow.
They're carbon, and what I noticed after going through these different types of arrows or different manufacturers is the spine tolerances and the weight tolerances are totally, like, if your weight tolerances, if he's getting up plus or minus 5 grains, the spine tolerances are the same. It's going to be up to 20. Whereas the guy we got, like, if you buy a shaft for me, like a tournament, a 0.315 inside diameter tournament series arrow for 3D tournament shooting, weight is plus or minus 0.5 grains, and the spine index is like 10. So there's no deflection. Like, it's a wicked arrow, and same as the .003s on the ventilators. We have a ventilator line and a micro ventilator. The same thing. They're just, the spine tolerances and the weights were so amazingly good from this manufacturer. Like, his QA/QC is really good. Whereas, the other ones, they just couldn't compete with this guy, So we went with the best, we think is the best, arrow we could, and try to, keep the price reasonable for the hunters and the tournament archers, So
why is it important that you need to have the spine and the weight as close to the same, for all your hunting arrows, practice arrows too.
Well,
but hunting and tournament, it's critical. And I didn't realize that until I started weighing my arrows. I shoot a crossbow because I'm old and my shoulders are torn out. But having said that, and the guy that I was getting set up with for the year, he goes, we got to weigh these because you're going to be shooting out to 60 yards, blah, 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 blah. And so we want to reduce any differences in any of these arrows. And I shoot G5s, Montags, right. And so their tolerances are right there. And so we went through all my arrows and weighed them until we found 6 that were, hundreds, thousands, not hundreds, but thousands apart, both on the shaft. So, why is that so critical that people really need to know that they have to have within X tolerance for their hunting arrows or tournament arrows?
Well, because the accuracy, because it's human error is the worst, obviously the biggest problem. But then if your arrows are inconsistent, it's, and that's the thing is I can't shoot the difference between a .001 and a .003. Like I can't, I'm not a good enough shot, but you get guys that are good, and they can, I'm not saying our arrows are better than anyone's, but they're definitely as good. Like I would let Levi Morgan shoot my arrows against anyone's, and he, they shoot nice. We got guys in New Brunswick, tournament shooters. We picked up a few pro staff guys, and they love them. And the one guy is super picky, like they all are. Those tournament guys are super picky, and some hunters are too. The thing is, if you're only shooting 20, 30 yards, it's not a huge deal. But as soon as you get out to 40, 50, 60, 70, if you're going to, I wouldn't shoot a deer that far, because they jump the string, but an elk or a moose, you could shoot, 50, 60 yards on a moose, quartering away. It's a huge difference. You can't, there's no comparison. Like you'll just lay them in there all day in a 6-inch group, when you have the spine tolerances and the weights and everything the same, it's amazing the difference.
And so, we're getting, Calvin used the word picky, but as you become a 365 whitetail hunter, these make the difference. These little pieces, they all accumulate and they make the difference. So I just had a guy in the show that he regularly shoots 100 yards practicing. And he'd set up. He's not a tournament archer. He's a guy that loves. His name's Jackson from Southern Illinois. Anyway, and he never tournament shot, and he picked up a new Hoyt, and they said, "What can we do with this? How far your sights go out?" He said, "Well, I can go out to 100 yards." So he put the block target, and his buddy said, "Oh, I can do this," and he just came up a smidgen. He didn't hit the target; he was right in front of it. So then Jackson takes the bow and drills it. I mean, he said it was 2 inches off the black, from center punching. And first time ever 100 yards, but he has the right gear. Everything was set up right. And then he had the confidence to do it. And folks, ethical kills are important. Know your limits, but be confident. There should be no doubt when you pull up on that deer, you know exactly where the arrow is going to go, and you're going to kill that deer. Your thoughts, Calvin?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. It's the same thing like with a rifle. Like if it's within 200 yards of you, if you're leaning and you're like any average hunter, it should be dead. There's no you're like even with a cheap Bushnell scope or whatever Tasco and the cheapest like a old 303 British. I took the top of the head of a coyote off at 180 yards with my dad open sight 303 British when I was 15 years old. So it's the same with a bow. Like there's so much more room for error with a bow. You can hit a branch or whatever, and then you take all that time to get into the position to get this animal, and then you miss. It's just devastating. That's the difference between being the guy saying, "Yeah, I had this 180-inch deer and I missed," or the guy holding the picture. Is how well you can shoot, because when you get the opportunity, you got to hit it. And that's a lot of guys. We had a guy on camera shoot 3 times at a 150-inch deer and miss it, and it was insane. With a rifle,
Oh.
Yeah. That was last year. Boom. And he, takes his time, breathes, boom, because he had a camera facing back to show his reaction, like real time. Missed again. And then boom, he shoots and misses again. And then he sights in his rifle and it's way off, And
I always ask you that.
Yeah. Yeah. I always check my rifles. I knew, the deer, as soon as he cleared the trees, he was dead meat. Like the one I got this year, I know it. And maybe that sounds arrogant or overconfident, but I'm not 16 years old. I'm 45. And I've shot a lot of animals, and if I'm leaning and it's at 200 yards, that's a big target. With a rifle. So
yeah. And my when I set up my rifles, 5 shots at 3.5 inches high, quarter group. So I take 5 shots inside a quarter from a bench. Yeah, I'm all set up, solid, rock solid. All I do is squeeze the trigger. I don't pull the trigger, squeeze the trigger. So I know that rifle is going to do everything I want out to wherever I want to shoot it, basically. Exactly, but the thing is, and I unfortunately traveled, and every time I get to camp, once I get to camp, if it's nighttime, the first thing next morning, okay, let's go out, get on the bench, get on, whatever you got to shoot. I'm going to go to 100 yards, and that sucker better be 3 inches high, at 100 yards. And if it isn't, then I know something's wrong.
Yeah, we went on a bear hunt in BC with hounds. It was awesome. And we chased them up a tree. And every night, Jason and I would shoot our bows. Or in the morning before we'd go, we'd shoot them morning and night just to make sure. And that bear, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Once that bear was in the tree, it was at 17 yards, and there was a branch. It had its front leg over a branch, and they, put the laser pointer and said, shoot him right there. And I drew back, lifted up, and I shot him, and it was just the brutalest sound you've ever heard. And he held on for the count about 3, and then he fell. And he was a 6'4" bear, like he was a big bear, 19-inch skull. And he hit the ground, bounced, twitched, and that was the end. And that's with, that was a micro though. They're a heavy arrow. There's 497 grains is what I'm shooting with a Hoyt turbo, and it just went right through him. Couldn't even find the arrow. Just destroyed him. So, and that's what you want, right?
Well, yeah.
That's what I'm looking. You don't want it running away. And even our guides like Big Cat Adventures, Brian and Claudette Chorney, they're super good people. They were just blown away, like that it died so quick. Like they were just like, wow, And it was, still at 17 yards, you can screw up, or I could have hit the branch or whatever, but I had confidence in myself and my equipment that it was, and then when you think it's dead usually. Like it's a lot of it's brain, your way of thinking too, right? So yeah, that was a fun hunt. Those dogs are amazing. So
Calvin, we're at the time of the show. You get some shout outs, and then we're going to wrap the show.
Okay. Our website is killinstix.com, and our show website is theboneyardtv.com. Who else should I thank? I'd like to thank Matt Siemens for the scope and Chris Profata for the Weatherby rifle that I took that deer with this year. Thanks, guys. They're pretty cool guys, and they're big time hunters. Matt Siemens is a major hunter, and I'd like to thank my partner Jason for all his work and all the guys that hunt for me. Thanks, guys. It's appreciated packing that camera around.
So on behalf of all our thousands of listeners across North America, Calvin Buckler, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Can't wait to see you at ATA, again, booth number 223. And Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Right on. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year.
You're going to get a kick out of the next episode. I have 2 gentlemen from down south, Leon Smith, a.k.a. Country Boy, and his running partner, Jonathan W. Thompson, a.k.a. Old Dude. Now, Jonathan runs Deep Hollow Guide Service and produces Buck Aid Deer Minerals. And a.k.a. Country Boy has 3-in-1 Outdoors. You're not going to miss this. You're going to cry. You're going to smile, and you're sure going to be entertained.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.